Good afternoon. Please continue with your lunch, and we're going to kind of get started on our program here this afternoon, and we've got someone who's going to come speak to you that I think is going to bring you information that will be very useful and valuable to you, and at the same time, I think you're going to enjoy listening to George. George Arrants comes to us from Lake Jackson, Texas, and I first met George probably about 9 or 10 years ago at the very first TIVA conference that I went to after I took the position that I'm in now, and George was there working with our automotive teachers, and I asked somebody who George was, and they said, he's just an old automotive instructor that comes to all of our stuff. And I thought, well, that's really nice of him. And I later found out that what George really does is he is kind of the consultant who works with our schools not only in Texas but throughout the nation, trying to help those schools have better programs, particularly in the area of transportation and automotive technology and automotive collision. And George works with the NATEF and ASE accreditation programs. He also works with a company called Wheel Time Network, which he provides training and resources for them as well. George was sharing with me a little bit earlier that he's got a really busy summer, and he's taken some time out of it to come be with us today, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about advisory councils and the role of advisory councils in career and technical education. So, George, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. What if I told you for the next hour I was going to waste your time? What would you think? Let's just make it right up front, okay? Just going to waste an hour of your time. When we talk about advisory committees, what we're really talking about is partnerships. My partner in crime normally is sitting right there enjoying her lunch, Ruthie Knepper, and we usually do this presentation at some of the conferences. But it is about a partnership. I've worked with nearly 1,000 schools around the country, and I will tell you, I haven't seen everything, but I've seen a lot of good and a lot of bad. And a lot of it comes down to lack of communication between industry and education. And traditionally, when education walks up to industry, they walk up with their hands like this, when it should be like this. And in all my travels, and I have 2 million miles on an airplane and have spent 2 years of my life in Hilton hotels, I can tell you that whenever I hear about a CTE program closing, I only ask one question. And that question is, did that program have an active advisory committee? And 100% of the time, the answer is no. If industry doesn't know you're there, they're never going to know you're gone. A few years back, Fort Bend ISD had a major RIF, reduction in force. A lot of CTE teachers lost their jobs, and the only people that missed them were their colleagues. It happens all the time. Most people don't understand the value of an advisory committee and think it's just a check in the box. I spoke at National ACTE a few years back, and a gentleman who was the principal of the King Career Center in Anchorage, Alaska, came up and said, "I want you to come to Alaska." And I said, "Well, sure ain't gonna be in the wintertime." Sure enough, end of January. But when I said what I just told you, if industry doesn't know you're there, they're never gonna know you're gone, he said that resonated with him. And before I came up at the end of January, over his Christmas break, he went out and invited nearly 300 business and industry folks to an open house in mid-January at the King Career Center. He said, "George, 2/3 of the people that came to the open house didn't even know the building existed and had been there since 1975. So what we're talking about is working together, industry and education, understanding. As CTE educators or administrators, you only have 2 customers. Any marketing person in the world would be tickled pink to only have to have 2 customers. And your 2 customers are the students and the people that hire them. Everybody else is in your way. And if you focus on those two customers, you're going to be successful. And the one customer, the student, is entrusting you to provide them with the skills and training that they need to be hired by the other customer. And a lot of times, all you got to do is go out and ask business and industry what they need, and they'll tell you. Unfortunately, it's scary how little they're going to ask from you because their workforce needs are massive. Meetings. How many people love meetings? We hate them, don't we? Why do we hate them? Somebody talks, everybody listens, right? Nobody asks for your opinion. Nothing is resolved. There's nothing measurable that happens at the end of the meeting. And when you walk out, you said, you could have done that in an email, right? We've all been in those meetings, right? Either fallen asleep, hope we missed that meeting, wish we would have just got the memo a day late. But how many of us run those same type of meetings and invite business and industry into your school and bore them for an hour and a half while you sit there and talk and nobody asks them, what do you need? And I'm going to tell you what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you three things. Whether you're talking about a doctor, whether you're talking about a law firm, whether you're talking about an automotive repair shop, or do you want fries with that? All going to tell you the same basic things. Can you get them to show up on time? Can you get them to show up every day? And can you make sure they leave their cell phone in the car? I was on an airplane with a lady who owns a CPA firm in Canada, and we were on the subject. And she says, I only deal with MBAs all day long. She says, but the cell phone issue has gotten so bad that I had to buy little lockers. And when they come to work in the morning, I have to lock up their phones. I have to give it back to them at lunch, relock them up, and give it back to them at the end of the day. MBAs. She says it affected my business that much. I can tell you that as administrators, if you would just enforce the rules that you have in your school every day equally with every student, half the problems of business and industry would be gone tomorrow. I'm not asking you to make the rules different. Just enforce the ones you have. We blame this generation, but we created this generation. And the problem is we've been giving them a trophy for last place since they were 6 years old when we should have said, pick another sport. There are winners and losers, and they all keep score. I have 5 children. DNA says they're all mine. And my 5 kids will tell you the first person that's going to tell you you're good at something is dad. But if you're bad at something, the first person going to tell you is, we're not going to do that again. That was no fun for any of us. We're going to go find something else to do. You bet. And all 5 of my kids are in completely different occupations. And my only one in my automotive industry is my daughter. 4 boys and a girl, and the only one in the automotive, daughter. Welders, Army, the whole 9 yards. This generation, if you really understand this generation, they don't have a problem with rules. They have a problem with our enforcement of those rules, and we pick and choose how we want to enforce them. And when they see that, they're done with us. That's what you have to understand. And business and industry will talk about that. But we all hate meetings, but many of us have put on the same meetings for other people. And when business and industry shows up, they're taking time out of their schedule to come to your school because they have a need and want to share information. And if you don't even ask them what they need, wasted their time. Insurance. Everybody has insurance. You wouldn't take a chance. Auto, home, life, health. You have job insurance? You sure do if you have an advisory committee. There's not an administrator in the world that's going to close a program where business and industry has been involved or is involved. About 10 years ago, they tried to close the collision program at Victoria ISD. And in the school board meeting, they were getting ready to close the program, and the school board was getting ready to vote. The entire advisory committee showed up, business and industry. Program's still going. Industry drives the train. If any of you have ever been to the new Pasadena CTE High School, you need to go see that place. 250,000 square feet, $37 million, driven by business and industry. Caddo Career Center in Shreveport, Louisiana, old career center. But in the back is this pretty auto shop. The reason that auto shop is there is business and industry went to the school board years back and said, your facilities are inadequate for our needs. The school board traditionally said, we'll take that under advisement. That didn't go over real well. So they came back a few months later and they said, this is what we pay in school taxes, this is what we pay in payroll taxes. You didn't understand, we weren't asking. We were saying, we want our money spent on this. They now have a 14-bay, 2 glass enclosed classrooms, 3 instructors, and the instructor has a private bath and shower in the back of his office. Industry drives the train. Industry, like my daughter, believes no is a 4-letter word that starts with a K and ends in a W, and you just need more information. And every one of us in this room, we're spending business and industry's money. Don't you think you should ask them how they would like it to be spent? Employment picture, pretty simple. Gross domestic product, what we make, what we sell, what we service. As it goes up, market goes up. As it goes down, so does the job market. I live in Lake Jackson, Texas. We are petrochemical. There is no unemployment in Lake Jackson, Texas. The only people unemployed, people that don't want to work or can't pass the drug test. No ifs, ands, or buts. Dow Chemical is quietly moving people from Midland, Michigan into Lake Jackson, Texas. A year and a half ago, we had 1 4-story building. We now have 5. That just doesn't happen overnight. At a stop sign where there was never anybody at the stop sign, now there's 20 people in front of you trying to get through that stop sign. Let's talk about the current and future workforce. We as baby boomers, we're retiring at an alarming rate. And for the next 3 decades, we are going to create a vacuum in the workforce. No ifs, ands, or buts. We're already starting to create that vacuum. What are we going to do to make sure that that vacuum is minimized? Industry and education need to work together. H-1B immigration visas. That's a visa business and industry lobby for somebody to come in that has skills or training to work in their company, and we can't provide that internally. That's a problem. Structurally unemployed, the term economists use. Somebody who's structurally unemployed is educated or trained. Problem is, their education or their training doesn't match what the real world needs. And that is becoming a huge issue in our country. Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS or BS, depending on how you look at it. But there is some good statistics. I've got some stuff. I had the honor of working under President Bush's High Growth Job Training Initiative for the U.S. Department of Labor and chaired the Automotive High Growth. Got to meet some folks over there. Were really cool. So whenever I need numbers, I email them and they know exactly the charts I need and send them to me. And unfortunately, many of our young people today are underemployed. They went and did exactly what we told them to do. They went and got that education, and now they got that piece of paper. They can't find a place to go. I got a son just turned 26 years old. He's a welder. Completely debt-free. All of his friends are graduating from college with debt up to their ears. His W-2 last year showed $76,000. I'm okay with that. You know, our generations and the movement in our generations, we need to understand this. Traditionalists, us the baby boomers, Gen X, let's just be honest, you guys are just mad at the world. And then we got the Gen Ys. And that should be WHY, because you ask why about everything. Well, now some people call them the millennium. Interesting generation, though. Very powerful. They are a great workforce. You just need to know how to engage them. And once you do, they will do phenomenal things for you. But here's what's happening. Us, the baby boomers, we are retiring. We are creating. Here's the thing is, we know the next 2 decades of workers that are going to enter the workforce because they're somewhere between the mother's womb and exiting college. We already know what that number is. And we know the number of us that are going to be leaving the workforce. That creates that gap. What we're starting to experience right now, and some of us have been talking about it for 20 years, we're experiencing something we haven't experienced since World War II, and I hate the term, but we are going to be short human capital. That's a problem. That's why it's more important now than ever before that industry and education are communicating. Most of you probably don't know this, but every occupation in this country has a 6-digit code. And every 2 years, the Department of Labor tells you how many people are in that occupation and projects out growth 10 years out. But then they also tell you what the total number of growth and replacement. If you do the simple math, you're going to find out that in most of the skill areas, 60% of the workforce needs in the next 10 years are replacement. It's pretty scary. This is my fun slide. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, 17.9% of the jobs in 2012 required a bachelor's degree. That number is going to grow a whopping 0.2% by 2022. That's it. Also shows that people with master's degree make $4,000 a year less than people with bachelor's degree. Do you know why that is? Because the main occupation that promotes based on education is education, and you actually pull the scale down. Engineers don't require a master's degree and stuff like that. Nope. That's right out of the Department of Labor website. Historical perspective. Industry and education have been islands unto themselves. I am going to tell you, when I taught at Brazosport High School, I did not do it right. If I would have just went out and asked business and industry, what did you need, and they would have told me, more of my students would have been successful. Or if they would have come to me and just said, George, I just need you to do this, this, and this. And the results weren't as good as they could be. Many of my students and students that we've all been involved with have fallen through the cracks because we really didn't know what business and industry needed, and we really didn't properly prepare them. But in this century, our success is going to depend on that relationship and asking those questions. No ifs, ands, or buts. What I'm going to talk about today is the types of advisory committees, who should be a member, recruitment of members, purpose of the proposed committee, time, location, and agenda, and follow-up of advisory committee minutes. What role or value does your advisory committee provide your program? Problem is, most people don't understand that. They're just trying to check a box and say, I got a meeting. Now, if Ruthie was up here, this is where we'd have fun, because this is where we'd start to argue, like husband and wife. I say that you need to do this, she needs to say that, but then 2 years ago I realized Ruthie was right. So I am publicly saying Ruthie was right. Okay? And I have no problem saying that at all. Traditionally, small school districts, because of the limited resources, use the shared committee. And I'm not a big fan of that. But I worked with Klein ISD, which is a very large school district, and they started with a large single advisory committee, or business and education council as we called it, and got the groundwork set up with all of the CTE programs in business and industry, and then finally funneled it down into area specifics. But in many of the programs, especially in larger communities, your advisory committees need to be program specific. The what's in it for me. If I'm in an advisory committee meeting, the only time cosmetology is important to me is when I need my hair cut. The only time construction trades is important to me is when the roof leaks. Okay? All I want to do is talk about automotive. Other than that, it's a waste of my time. But if we're doing a shared committee and the agenda is set up correctly, and we're talking about just the needs, the general needs of business and industry and what CTE needs to do, that's the way to drive the train, and I learned that from Ruthie. Who should be a member? This is the one I love. Most times when people don't have an advisory committee, I ask why. And do you know what the most common response is by educators and administrators? There's nobody to serve. And then my response is, then why do we need your program? Scares them every time. If there's nobody to serve on the advisory committee, why would we need that program? That means there's no business and industry to support that or hire the kids. Well, why would we do this? Gets them every time. Who should be a member? Employers. The people whose name's on the marquee. HR personnel. People that actually do the hiring. Staffing agencies. Technicians or related occupation. People that actually do the job that or career that you're training for. Parents of current and former students. Yes, students today still communicate with their parents, and they provide a very strategic role on that committee. Suppliers. Anybody and everybody who sells you anything for your program should be on your committee. Also, they know every other business and industry that needs your type of students and can open the doors for you there. because they're selling the same products to those people. And they're also hearing from those people, do you know anybody who's hiring? Or do you know anybody who needs a job? Manufacturers, people that actually manufacture the products. On the automotive side, it's the car manufacturers. This one gets me every time. Many school districts are either dual credit or have an articulation agreement, but the secondary instructors do not serve on the post-secondary committee, and the post-secondary instructors don't serve on the secondary committee. So how the heck do you know what each other's teaching, and if it is truly a seamless transition? You don't, unless you're both involved in each other's committee, or they're a joint committee. And the number one most important person to have on your advisory committee, the former student. How do you make program improvements without asking your customer, how did we do? Every one of us in this room, when we leave this hotel, you're probably going to get a survey. If you fly on an airplane, you're going to get a survey. If you buy something from Amazon, you're going to get a survey. And what are those surveys there for? They want to increase their customer service and make sure that you were satisfied. For some reason in education, we don't go out and ask our customers, how do we do? I live by 3 simple philosophies: undercommit and overdeliver, never schedule a losing ball game, and egos are fat-free and we need to swallow them. It's not about me. Okay? No ifs, ands, or buts. I don't care what somebody says. If they tell me I did something wrong, I can improve on it. If you don't tell me, I'm going to continue doing what I've always done. How often in your programs does technology change? Many of you rapidly. Our industry also. How do you know if what you're teaching is relevant and reflective if you don't go out and ask your customer, how'd we do? As a CTE director or somebody controlling budgets, if you needed some piece of equipment and former students said if that piece of equipment was in place, it would have been easier for me to get this job, or I would have had to gone through less training, and the employers are sitting there going, agree, we just had to spend $4 grand on each one of those kids because they didn't have the skill sets that we needed. Sold. And the administration. For some reason we forget those people. I chair the advisory committee at Cypress Ridge High School, and I have since the school opened brand new over 12 years ago. Principal, assistant principal, head counselors, somebody from special ed, and all those other people. And somebody said, well, why special ed? Do you have learning disabled students in your program? Yes. Does anybody in special ed know what you teach? No. How are they going to learn? Somebody's got to tell them. Does the principal know what you teach? No. Can't even spell half your programs. The only way they're going to know is they have to be involved. And ever since then, that program wants for nothing. And I can tell you that over 12 years. Recruitment of members. Most people say, I tried to have an advisory committee meeting, but nobody showed up. And I'm going to tell you why they didn't show up. Because you used the same process you've always used. And that is, we sent out a mail. We sent it out on school letterhead in a school envelope, and I put it in the front office, and they put stamps on it, and out they went, right? Now, at the end of summer, when you go back, or whenever you go back to school, there's going to be mail waiting for you, correct? Hopefully there's a check, right? Bills we put over here, everything else goes file 13, circular under G, right? Throw away. If I see something from a school district, I think one of two things if I'm business and industry: the school wants money or the school wants money. I've already been hit up by the band booster, the football booster, and if I don't know who you are, I'm not expecting that letter. Where's it go? Boom, file 13. You have to get out of your classrooms, and you have to go out and meet business and industry. You have to walk through the front door, find the guy or gal whose name's on the marquee, walk in, introduce yourself, tell them where you work and what you teach. Then ask them if they need any entry-level employees. They're all going to say yes. Then you ask them, will you be willing to give me an hour and a half of your time twice a year to tell me how to properly prepare a young person to come to work for you? And then you're going to have to perform CPR because they're going to hit the floor because nobody's ever come to ask them before. And while you're there, ask them 2 other things. What's the best way for me to communicate with you? And what is the best time to meet? We'll cover that in a minute. You need to go out and meet business and industry. Do not put friends on your committee. Friends will not tell you what you need to hear. They're afraid of hurting your feelings. I, on the other hand, am not. I'm worried about your two customers. I don't care about your feelings. I want these people to have an opportunity. Phone. If you've established a relationship, phone is excellent. And if you're going to do follow-up, have your students do the follow-up calls. It's very powerful when students call business and industry. Part of your student organization, professional development, you're already teaching that, let them use those skills. Email. Most people want to communicate by email. There's something called email etiquette. If you're starting a brand new advisory committee, you blind CC everybody. Because you don't want suppliers having business owners or different people's email addresses. You don't want to share that information. You blind CC everybody until that committee is established. We at Cy Ridge, we don't worry about that anymore. We're good. We've been together a long time. And while you're out meeting business and industry, you have to determine a chairperson, because you are the worst chairperson in the world. Why? If a subject comes up on funding or money or something that needs to be done, how do you look at your boss and go, so when are you going to get that done? It ain't going to happen. But I, as business and industry, will go, who's going to get that done? And whatever she says goes in the meeting minutes. And guess what we're going to talk about the next meeting? Did that get done? Okay? Business and industry need to chair the committee. Find that person, that spark plug, that when you're out there. Now, mind you, all they have to do is run the meeting. Business and industry are good at that. You do everything behind the scenes. I'll show you that in a minute. Folks, use your calendar on Outlook. If you do that, within 15 minutes, you know who's coming and who's not, because they got three choices: accept, decline, and tentative. Boom. Done. You know what to prepare for. It's on their calendar. It's there embedded. No administrative assistant, anybody can put anything over. It's right there. And when you do, you send the agenda. You send any past meeting minutes, the location, and any additional information they need. Everything is right there for them. You want them to give them every opportunity to attend and be there, because they do. They want your students. Purpose of the proposed committee. What's in it for me? Problem is, most people start with the meeting and decide, what are we going to do? No. The way you start with a meeting is, what do you expect to accomplish? What are your goals and objectives in that meeting? And then that's where you start from the end and work your way forward. But you have to determine the what's in it for me for everybody you invite, whether they show or not. If you do not, you wasted their time. So if you're going to invite them, you need to make sure there's something in it for them. Huge difference. What do you want? We want industry advice. What's going on in industry? What changes? What are the technology changes? Is our technology current, or do we need some assistance? As scary as this sounds, nobody ever asked business and industry, do you need any people right now? Never gets asked. And some of them, they'll tell you, they know what they need right now, they know what they need in 3 months, and they know what they're going to need probably for the next 2 years, especially if they got an expansion underway. Program improvements. When you have the committee meeting, if you have a lab shop area, have the committee meeting in the lab shop area. And don't clean it up before they get there. You want them to see what you have, but more importantly, you want them to see what you don't have. How are they going to help you if they don't know what you don't have and what you do have? I'm going to tell you, this is the biggest one right here. I'm probably going to offend some people in the room, and I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not. Certifications are important, but if industry doesn't recognize them, you're wasting somebody's money. Before you go down the certification path, the first thing you do is ask business and industry, do you recognize this? If they go, what the heck is that? You know you don't need to be spending money on that. In the automotive industry, it's ICAR certification in the collision. It's ASE in automotive. No ifs, ands, or buts. Those are the two. Non-negotiable. Anything else? Just paper. If you're looking for the check in the box, you're going to get the check in the box. If you want to give your students an advantage on their resume, find the certification that matches what business and industry needs. And a lot of times they'll help you pay for it. I know we do at Cy Ridge. Any kid that's willing to take the professional ASE, we, the advisory committee, pay for it. No ifs, ands, or buts, pass or fail. If there's a program certification, move towards that program certification. But don't get a piece of paper for a student that industry doesn't recognize. It's an embarrassment in an interview when the kid says, I got this, and the person at HR or the hiring person goes, what is that? Takes the wind out of their sail every time. We all understand about Perkins funding. I don't have to go down that pathway. Review graduate follow-up. In our certification or accreditation for NATEF ASE accreditation, we require annually that the schools do a follow-up survey of graduates and then take that information that they have acquired from the graduates and summarize it and share it with the advisory committee to make program improvement. Non-negotiable. You can't make program improvement without asking your customer, how did we do? You got to bring them back in or survey them, just like other businesses and industries do. Folks, let's have a meeting when it's best for business and industry and not us. Many times the reason people don't show up is you schedule the meeting a little bit after the time you get out of school because that's convenient for you, but it's not convenient for them. How many of you in this room have children? Grandchildren? They're involved in baseball, football, soccer, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, church, all those things. Did you know that business and industry have children and grandchildren too, and they're involved in the same activities? And one of those activities in the evening. So if you schedule a meeting at 5 o'clock, guess who's showing up? Nobody. Depending upon what your industry is, if it's shift workers or whatever, you have to adjust your meeting to find out what is best for industry and not for you. Cy Ridge, 11:30 to 1, middle of the week, middle of the month, every time. We have 24 people on our advisory committee. We have an average showing of 20. The last 2 years, we've had people show up at our advisory committee meeting we didn't invite. They heard about our program. They want to hire our kids. They've just been showing up. We're okay with that. Mornings. Some schools, small communities, I work with Andrews ISD, 7 a.m. We have an advisory committee meeting. Works great. You get them before anybody gets a chance to make them mad. Think about that. You know what I mean? They're still in a good mood when they get to you. Little coffee, little breakfast, get some stuff done. Their day's downhill from there. You know what I mean? But most, it's lunch. Folks, evening's bad for you because you have things. Evening's bad for them. If you want them to show up, make it convenient for them. Schedule your meetings 45 days out. Bless you. My school in New York that I'm working with, the guy called me this morning, wanted to have an advisory committee meeting next Monday. I can't do it. Okay, we'll do it the Monday after that. You know what that plane ticket's going to cost. 45 days out. Give industry the opportunity to show up. They want to show up. Get it on their calendar. I do the 1-1-1. Even though it's on their calendar, you follow up 1 month out, 1 week, and 1 day. And when you follow up by phone, students do the follow-up calls. Very powerful. Very powerful. Location. Folks, first meeting always needs to be in your classroom or the lab shop area. It does not need to be in a restaurant, doesn't need to be in the principal's conference room. It needs to be right there. Once again, they need to see what you have, and more importantly, what you don't have. At Cy Ridge, we moved to the principal's conference room for one of our meetings. But here's what else we do. 1 meeting a year is hosted by business and industry, and they love it. We take the administration out of their comfort zone. We take them to a dealership, Stewart and Stevenson. They host the lunch. They get to see what really goes on behind the showroom of a dealership. How many people work there? What actually goes on. It's very powerful. One of our meetings a year is at business and industry. And it's usually our Christmas meeting because the principal always thanks business and industry for the things they do and provides gifts for them. We do some other cool stuff. We created a letter jacket for automotive technology 12 years ago at Cy Ridge High School. Students came to us with the criteria. We modified it with attendance and discipline. We came to a conclusion, Every student that earns a letter jacket in automotive technology over 12 years, we, the advisory committee, have bought every letter and every jacket for 12 years. Doesn't matter if it was 5 or 20. All I do is send an email out, and within 15 minutes, they're all paid for. But in the middle of May in Houston, Texas, we got a bunch of kids running up and down the hall, sweating their butts off, and those letter jackets tickled pink. But we got 200 people signed up for 40 slots. A pretty good deal, too. Agenda. Do not run over. If you have 7 items on the agenda, and after the second item, all you're through is that, and the meeting's over, table to the next. First meeting we had at Klein ISD, we got to item number 2 on the agenda. What does business and industry need? And we stayed on that, and we tabled it the rest to the next, and everybody in the meeting, all they wanted to know is when we have in the next meeting. Something got accomplished. And in the next meeting, we talked about the things that business and industry wanted and where it's integrated into the program, or where they were going to integrate it into the program. That's important too. Listen to what business and industry has to say. Don't wait to talk. Think about that. Curriculum. Folks, do not sit in front of them and tell them what you teach. They don't care. Ask them what they need and then show them where it's taught in the curriculum. So many times I've seen schools sit there and talk about curriculum till they're blue in the face and use terms that they don't understand. And they're sitting there going, can you get them to show up on time? Okay. Ask them what they need. Facility evaluations. Our accreditation also requires that we do an annual facility evaluation. And I've actually created a form so they're actually looking for things. And what you're looking for is safety and environmental issues. Hazards. You walk through the programs every day. See it every day. Stranger walks by and goes, why is that like that? I don't know. It's always been that way. Fix it. You bet. Barriers to entry. Folks, we can spend tons of time on this. And most of you that haven't had to apply for a job in 10 years, you don't have a clue what I'm talking about. If you don't understand what the barriers to entry are in the industry that you serve and what business and industry needs, you could teach them everything and get them all the certifications in the world. They're not hireable. In our industry, drug test, background check, driver's license check, and many employers now are doing a credit check. Non-negotiable. And we're doing hair follicles. Petrochemical is all hair follicles. Students need to understand that right off the bat. In the fall, when you go back to school, the first week of school, which is completely useless, bring business and industry in as guest speakers and have them tell the students what they expect. Then the rest of the year, your instructors are all they're doing is reinforcing what business and industry said instead of, if you do this, you'll get a job. No. Because people in business and industry are going to come in and say, we'll give you this, this, and this, but you better be able to do that, that, and that. You show up 3 times, we're firing you. And please do not have your mom come chew me out. And as much as you laugh, talk to business and industry. It is a common occurrence where a middle 20s individual is terminated and mom or dad shows up in the showroom floor, the place of business, and chews out the employer for firing their brat. As funny as it sounds, it happens every day. And you should hear some of the stories employers will tell you. They'll have your kids show up at their interview with their mom or their girlfriend or their grandmother. They come in shorts. They don't wear socks. Sample agendas. No matter what it is, you want to welcome introductions, discuss industry needs. The first meeting is all about business and industry. What do they need? What skills do you require? Credentials or certifications, barriers, employment opportunities and staffing needs. You want them to see what you have, but more importantly, what you don't have. Talk about the budget. You're spending their money. Open discussion. Sample facility evaluation. Have them actually check something. You have them going to look for certain things. Eye wash stations, safety glasses, MSDS sheets, all of those things that are important to your program. The second meeting, review introductions, review the previous meeting minutes, review curriculum. Whatever you discussed, show them where it's taught. Any additional tasks or skills that they want taught, update on any facility corrections based on what they found in the facility evaluation, summarize student and graduate surveys, survey both the students and the graduates prior to that second meeting, and then any possible recommendations. And you're also probably going to talk about budget again. What did you spend the money on and what are you going to need? elsewhere. A lot of times you may have something in your budget, business industry goes, oh, we got 2 of those, you can have 1 of ours. Happens all the time. All the time. You bet. Just sitting there. They don't know you need it till they in your meeting. Graduate surveys, I have a copy of a survey. Pearland ISD took the survey and they put it on a Survey Monkey. Boom, it all comes out with nice charts and everything. Really has some great information for the business and industry. And really the comments that you get from the students and the graduates, a lot of times are very powerful. Every once in a while you get a bozo out there, but most of the time they're pretty unique. And they're going to tell you a lot of information about your programs. There was a slide in there that I must have missed. If you're going to do an agenda, you need to put talking points under each item for your advisory committee chair, so that no matter who is running the meeting, they've got the talking points to that. And I'm sorry, I missed that slide right there. Taking minutes. Somebody needs to be the person that is taking the meeting minutes. I can't tell you how many times I get in a meeting and there's nobody there to take the minutes. Really? Set it up. Detailed minutes. I did this presentation for San Jac Community College in January. What I had them do, though, is I had them send me all the advisory committee minutes from all of their CTE programs over the last year, and I read them all. Oh my God, I'd rather watch paint dry. Nothing was accomplished. Nothing. It was blah, 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 and wasting business and industry time. One meeting had 17 college people in the meeting, 4 industry people. Must have been one heck of a lunch, okay? That's a problem. Recommendations. Mark them in the meeting minutes. Discussions. Who made the points and what points were made? Facility improvements. Once you complete a facility evaluation, what needs to be fixed? I can tell you, I've seen some scary things in schools. Bad scary. There's a school district, West Texas, that I asked them to do inspections on their lifts. Never had them done. 5 of the 9 lifts were red tagged. Okay? And the day I went into the school, the instructor was using one of them. A red tagged lift. They got replaced. Okay? But the point is, nobody thought of that. That's nothing compared to some of the other stuff. Concerns and corrections. All of that needs to be in the meeting minutes. If I didn't attend your meeting, I should be able to read those minutes and know exactly what happened in that meeting. I should be able to run with the next meeting and be able to be involved. Refer to the person making the statement. Send copies of all meeting minutes out to all members 2 weeks out, a dean, department chair, provost's office, superintendent's office, school board members, whoever. I have no less than 3 school districts that the superintendent serves on the advisory committee, and I will tell you, whenever a concern comes up, it gets fixed instantly. I am telling you what. It's amazing how quick that stuff gets fixed. This is a fun slide. I tell everybody they need to continue their education after high school, but sometimes 4-year college is not always the way. But in this country, out of every 100 kids that graduate from high school, 70 enroll in college, 42 return for their sophomore year, 34 advance to their senior year, and 28 actually graduate in 5 years with a 4-year degree. My daughter was on the 5-year plan. I had a nephew on the 8-year plan, but that was for his bachelor's. Only 14 were employed in their chosen occupation. If we had that success rate in CTE, we'd be out of business. 99.9%. People say I can't give 100%. I say, what part of the car don't you want me to put back on? Think about that one. 2 million miles on an airplane, you know, I'm sure glad they all land properly every day. But this is another fun slide. Doctors would drop 50 newborn babies every day around the world at 99.9%. Sure glad they catch them all. We would have 1 unsafe hour of drinking water per month, 2 unsafe landings at O'Hare Airport every day. 16,000 pieces of mail lost per hour. I think the post office does handle that for us with no problem. 20,000 incorrect drug prescriptions, 500 incorrect surgical operations, 22,000 checks deducted from the wrong account daily. And those of you in the room that are baby boomers like me, your heart would fail to beat 32,000 times a year. We ask 100% of our students, why aren't we giving them 100%? And we cannot give them 100% without the involvement of business and industry in our program and the opportunities that the workforce provides these young people. No ifs, ands, or buts. Consultants, they're highly paid and used by many. Governments, military, corporations, small business, towns, everybody uses them and others. Having an advisory committee, it's like having a consultant and not receiving an invoice. Think about that. Nobody knows your community better than your business and industry in the community. They're a huge resource. Why don't you use them? And if you're going to have a meeting, have it for a reason. Industry and education need to communicate in order for us to be successful in the state of Texas, in your community, or wherever you live. I want to thank you for your time today, and I sure hope I didn't waste your time, and if I did, I apologize. Thank you very much.